Today we're going to be answering the question, why am I going to court to challenge AG Bob Ferguson's misleading ballot title on Initiative 1922? Let's get into the details. Thank you for watching. My name is Glen Morgan, and this is We the Governed. So yes, I'm going to court once again, and I've been to court many times, but this time I'm going to court to challenge Bob Ferguson, who is the Attorney General of Washington State, for another misleading ballot title, which seems to be a pattern of behavior for this guy. And in this case, we're talking about an initiative, 1922, that appears to legalize all Schedule I hard drugs, and the AG's office is heavily involved in creating this ballot title. So part of one of the funny things that sometimes happens when I ask questions like this is asking why is like asking why the chicken crossed the road. Because as an activist, I'm usually going to try to engage and be involved in this process in any way that I can. And this just happens to be one of those tools that citizens who care about the process can be involved in. And when it comes to Attorney General Bob Ferguson, a lot of people wonder the involvement that his office oftentimes has in crafting ballot titles for initiatives. So oftentimes you get your voter's guide, and you look in the voter's guide and there's all these initiatives drafted up there, and you wonder, well, how did they come up with these titles for these initiatives, especially the complex ones? And the truth is there's a process for that, very legal process laid out in the law, that Bob Ferguson or the Attorney General's office has to craft that initiative. And in theory, they craft the initiative in a neutral manner so that it can adequately and properly educate the public as to what the initiative is actually all about. Because otherwise, if you only had the sponsors of the initiative who crafted that title, they would write it a certain way, and the opponents of the initiative would write it a different way. So in theory, the Attorney General's office acts as a neutral arbiter of exactly what this title is going to be. However, as we have seen, and particularly under AG Bob Ferguson, the process has been very corrupted now for a long time, and he has really put his thumb on the scale to tilt it in the direction either in favor of his political donors and supporters or against those who he doesn't like Tim Eyman or car tabs or people who want to reduce taxes. That's just how the AG's office has operated. But there's a process that any citizen can challenge that ballot title, and that's what I'm doing pro se, which means I'm representing myself in court. Nobody's paying me to do this. I'm just going and doing it on my own as a concerned citizen to challenge one of these ballot titles. And specifically, the one that I'm looking at was one that I think has been in the works for a while with the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. And so this is an organization that used to care about civil rights, but today they don't really seem to care about free speech, or certainly not Second Amendment rights or search and seizure rights anymore. They seem to be just focused on esoteric left-wing causes. And one of those causes apparently is this initiative 1922. Now, one of the ways I want to explain how I knew this was happening was that the ACLU set up a PAC recently, just a few weeks ago, and it's called the Commit to Change Washington PAC, and it's sponsored by the ACLU. You can actually look, I'll have the links down below, but you can look at their contributors page here, and you can see exactly how much money they put in. About $1 million has been put into it. The ACLU has put in about $834,000 at the point in time I'm recording this video. If you want to learn how to find the same information I found, go to pdc.wa.gov. It's the website that I link to down below, and I reference many times in these videos because there's a lot of information that you can find out there about exactly what's going on. And this is another example of how you can find out that something's happening. You know, this big PAC sets up to support an initiative, and the question is, what's actually going on here? Here's what happens. The Attorney General issued on March 24th, 2022, so just a little while ago, they gave it, this initiative, 1922, a title. This initiative was written by the ACLU. This is their proposal. And the title that they gave it is Concerns Drug Use Treatment and Penalties and Related Funding, which sounds pretty generic. And if you read the concise description that was issued, it says this measure would fund substance use disorder prevention, outreach, recovery, training, study, and public education, decriminalize drug possession, but allow seizure and forfeiture, authorize vacation of certain drug-related convictions, and amend related laws. Now, the question is, of course, is who cares, right? This sounds, bluebird, butterflies, and sunshine, right? We care about drug addiction. We want people to have more ability and access to resources, and we certainly do. Anybody who's ever been around an addict or has had friends or family members who have had to deal with this issue, you know that the most important thing you can do is get them off that substance, which is destroying their lives, and get them into some kind of a treatment. However, my concern has been with the proposal, and for some reason the ACLU seems obsessed with this, is that if you look at Seattle today, which is an example of what the state would look like with implementation of this kind of an initiative, the hard drug use is out of control. It's not being enforced in any way at all, so that these people can be put into some kind of detox process. And instead, it's just being allowed to run rampant and free. Because the one thing you're going to find is that when somebody's gotten addicted to fentanyl or heroin or meth, they don't want to get off of it. They're not going to get off of it easily. And they're not going to want to voluntarily go into any kind of a treatment program. You have to kind of give them a carrot and stick proposal. And I'm dealing with a lot of law enforcement that have been trying to deal with this issue now for a while, particularly when it's bad like this. This is what's happening if it's out of control. So let's go back and look at what that initiative title would have if I think it would be to make it more accurate to represent what it actually does. So this is what the AG has said it would be, right? This is their proposal. This is their language. The language that I'm suggesting that we use is a title that says Initiative 1922 concerns legalizing highly addictive narcotics, freeing convicted criminals, and suffering the consequences. That's a pretty effective description, I think, of what Seattle's become and what the ACLU and their concealed donors are actually pushing for here. And this measure, this is the concise description I propose, about this measure would legalize the use and possession of heroin, ecstasy, cocaine, methamphetamines, quaaludes, OxyContin, LSD, fentanyl, and morphine, free convicted criminals in prison for drug crimes, and redirect certain taxes to address the consequences. So now this is quite a bit different than the very softball sort of title that the Bob Ferguson's given. So the argument in court, and it's going to be in Thurston County Superior Court, a place that I know well and have been to many times, although I'm going in front of a judge that I haven't been in front of before, and the judge's name is Allison Zip, actually, and she comes from the AG's office, which is always concerning, but so do almost all the judges in Thurston County. So whether there's a bias that comes with that, I hope not. But it'll be in front of her court, and that will be arguing, and in pretty short order. This is a relatively fast legal process. I'm currently there's a bunch of attorneys on the AG side, a bunch of attorneys that the ACLU has hired with Pacifica Law, and so we're going back and forth with this motion practice, and we will see what happens. I mean, ultimately, the judge, and it's going to be this judge right here, she gets to decide which of these ballot titles, or some version. She actually has a little bit more authority. She can come in and create her own version if she thinks it's more accurate, and it all rests with her. There's no appeal. This is the only, she basically functions like a Supreme Court in this case, and that's what the law allows. That's what this process allows. So it's very quick, it's going right before her very fast, and the decision's final. So whatever she decides is what she decides. Now, I've done this before. It's not the first time. I wrote an article a couple years ago on my website when I challenged Initiative 1639, which was the anti-gun initiative that Bob Ferguson drafted, and they got a very softball, good guy title that time as well. And I did successfully, in the course of that argument, get the judge at the time to change the title, which I thought was an improvement. And it took about 4 weeks in this legal process back and forth. And I know there was a lot of anger directed at me by the anti-gun crew, because it did end up costing them a lot more in the signature gathering effort because it took so long to get through this process. But it is what the legal system allows, and based on what the judge ruled that time, that was a really good effort to make a change that was needed for that ballot title. The other one that I challenged, this is the first one I ever did, was actually 1631, which is a carbon tax initiative. And in that case, even though I think that was probably the best legally argued one that I've ever done so far, the first one out of the gate is usually the one that you probably, in some ways, do the best. But it was the best effort that I made, and I wrote an article about it, and there I actually tried to teach people how to do this as well. That one I was unsuccessful on. I wasn't able to get the judge to make a ballot title challenge. So I've had some successes and I've had some failures, and I haven't done one in a while, so I'm kind of back to doing one this time. I thought this was a good one to do, and we'll see what the results are. You won't know until you try, right? Because you have to show up. You have to go out there and try to make an impact, consistent with what I've always said. Now, I've gone out and done a lot of activism training over the last few months. One of the things I talk about is how to do a ballot title challenge. And the process changes a little bit, not much legally, but there's some there's some ways of filing documents with the court that are a little bit more efficient now in the post-COVID era. And so I am planning to write an article or do a video about this process when it's all said and done, so that other activists can get a little bit more insight, at least from my experience when I'm doing it firsthand. But we'll see coming up here, probably mid-April, we'll have a court hearing, and we'll see what the judge says and where we're going to be at in this process and where the judge errs on the side of this whole thing. So that's why I'm doing it. And I think it's important for people. This is just one of those things that it's good for an activist or people who care about these issues to get involved and engaged. And this is a good example of a way you can do it. If you feel comfortable enough in drafting legal documents, if you feel comfortable enough in arguing in front of a judge and doing so in a pretty quick and expedited manner, this is a great way to be engaged in the process and to get more involved. And if you want to learn more, I'll try to get the hearing videotape so I can demonstrate what the actual courtroom process looks like if you're going to try to do this yourself. And I hope that it'll be educational and useful for others who can do the same thing. So with that, as I've always said, you have to be engaged to make a difference. If you aren't going to make any impact at all. If you want to learn more about what's actually going on in this case, you can go to the various links I have down below. I'll provide some of my filing documents as well as the court documents there. You can see for reference. And if you want to learn more, go to wethegovern.com. I encourage you to subscribe, share this video with others, and just remember, because I do care about activism and your ability to make an impact, the future belongs to those who show up.